All right, I call the July 8th, 2025 Colonial School District Board of Education meeting to order. Please rise as Mr. Robin Crosson recites leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are none.
All right, with none, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Could you do me a favor, just read the whole thing for me, Mr. Walls?
No, I'll say it. Make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. And as moved by Mr. Laws, seconded by Mr. Handy, are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, no questions or comments. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. All right, motion's carried. All right, and moving right on to public comment. Do we have any other public comment?
So we do have one public comment, but we also would like to cede the floor to board member Mr. Robin Crosson to make a statement during public comment.
Mr. Robin Crosson?
Thank you very much. I am ending my term as a school board member as I've moved out of the district. And so at this point, I'm completing 50 years and 6 months. Teaching for 40 years, the school board for 7, and in between I did summer school at Leach. So it's pretty much continuous. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I appreciate all these people. And I like being on the board because I actually know everybody and everything, including where the skeletons are and everything else. But it's a good district, and I've seen other districts, and this is really a good district. And I really appreciate being on the legislative committee. Thank you, Chris. And my son would like to finish up and make a few comments.
So I'm going to now recognize John Crosson, son, William Penn grad, as well, to say a few words.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mizzer. My name is John Crosson, and I am the second of Robin's 4 children. Our older sister Sally was graduated class of '94. William Penn, I was valedictorian of the class of '97, and our younger brother David was graduated of the class of '98. I have our younger sister Mary here, who went to Caravel, so we won't. As Dad mentioned, he's ending 50 years of service to the Colonial School District, which is longer than I've been alive. So for my whole life, he has been working here in Newcastle, serving the students of this district. And in many capacities, he started at Eisenberg as the greenhouse ag teacher, and then went over to William Penn as the greenhouse teacher before spending a long tenure at Wallace Wallen, and then going back to William Penn for ag, and until finally ending up at Leach School. And I have many fond memories growing up of us going to Wallace Wallen and helping to water the plants on the weekend to make sure everything stayed alive, because a greenhouse teacher's job is not Monday through Friday. And then during high school, would go over with the student council and Mrs. Kessler, who was the advisor at the time, to Mary Beth Kessler was the advisor to the student council. We would go over and help with the Leach prom. And that was always such a moving experience, because there are many teachers who have a job to teach. For those who teach at Leach, it's really a ministry of caring, of love, of compassion, and service that goes beyond simply teaching. And my dad has dedicated most of his career to serving those students among us who are the most special and who require the most care and may often be dismissed or forgotten but he has lived his life of service, caring for them with grace, with patience, and humility. And so as he comes to the end of his 50 years of service, I think is one of those milestones that we don't see too often anymore these days, and I don't think we'll see very often in the future, where someone can say that they spent 50 years of service in one career in one district. And so I commend his years of service and his example to all. I know that this past year has been very difficult without my mom, who is always his greatest cheerleader and companion through all of those 50 years. And I know that she would be proud tonight. So well done, Dad.
Robin, stay up front here.
Hold on.
Hold on.
You have parting gifts.
You have parting gifts.
He's not
I know. Yes, he's only got another,
As a thank you, Robin, for everything, we want to just give you a certificate of recognition for everything that you have done here for this district for the past 50 years. Pause for the media gallery. Good?
And also, Robin, here's a few parting gifts for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Some swag and a couple of special mementos, hopefully. I have to say, I appreciate everything you've done for Colony. I knew you when I first started in 1991 for the ag program.
And you're really graduating.
David's not here.
I was part of the David Crosson graduation situation. But we made it through that.
You know, when did you start at that? Was I here too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were student teaching.
It was descent. As soon as, remember?
Okay. No,
They
but
went
we
from a-
student taught
Yeah, but you
together.
were 90.
Yeah.
You must have been in the building at
Yeah,
it.
they had
90 to
11 districts,
94.
and then all of a sudden they went to one,
Right.
kicked me over to William Penn, and there were so many people at William Penn compared to other schools. It's like, I didn't even know people getting in the building.
Right.
You were down in W1.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah, that's where the greenhouse.
Yeah, right there, yeah, he was there when we were there.
Okay.
Dr. Littlejohn.
Yep, Joel. Little.
Ah, yeah.
Whoa! We won't go there. We'll leave that one unsaid. Joel was special.
And is this in lieu of me being president till the end of the meeting?
Yeah, it's gonna happen today.
Robin,
Good job, Dad.
Robin, hang on, you got,
Good.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. You've been with us now on the board for
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
You didn't make the 10th, but
No.
I know you.
Somebody cut it short.
And it has been a pleasure that you've been here working with us, and I appreciate you, everything you did to support the whole board, but me when I was president of it too. So thank
Yes.
you very much.
Thank you.
and I think we're gonna have a special visitor at some point here in a few minutes to also make a few remarks, so we'll pause the meeting wherever we are when that visitor arrives. That's good.
I do want to take a moment myself. I was going to wait till the end with it, but it's like Robin's son brought up some things. Robin, you were my first friend here on this board. You invited me in. I served as your alternate on the legislative committee.
That's right.
And, yeah, very much, he makes it clear, I was his alternate. But he invited me to every single meeting. He did not have to, and I will tell you, we have opposite views on a lot of different things, but it was some of the most fun learning everything from you and all of the knowledge that you have when it comes to that and with everything. And it was amazing. It made me proud as a colonial here to know, man, we changed a lot of minds down there, and we were not scared to speak up, and because you were there for the right reasons. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship and everything you've done to the district for the district. And you know, we're sad to see you go. So much, but we are so proud for what you've done, and we appreciate it. And I just wish you good luck with everything, and please don't be shy in coming back to visit, because we will miss you so much.
Thank you for your kind words and your friendship.
Now, he cannot be president because we're scared he's gonna do. So, we didn't know what he was gonna do. But,
We'll do it for one meeting.
yeah, scary enough. So, no, thank you, Robin, we really appreciate it. Do we have any other public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Well, I reserve board's prerogative to allow public comment when the special visitor arrives to make a statement for Rob.
Sounds good.
And that, the storm is what's kind of got, I know, one of our folks delayed.
All right, so we'll come back to public comment later on for the remaining ones. Now it is going to be discussion, and I'm going to ask Ted to please help me guide through this for moving on to the organization of the Board of Education for the 25-26 school year. With that being said,
Turn it over to Jeff.
I'm going to move over to,
Okay, just turn the camera over to me.
there we go.
And at this time, we will accept nominations for President of the Board of Education.
I would like to nominate Christopher PQ for President of the Colonial School Board.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So, moved by Ms. Smith, seconded by Crosson, Dorsey, and Breeding.
Let's get them all down. I want to make sure.
They gotta vote yet still. Give it we have Breeding. It was all at the same time.
Gotta show my
Breeding,
wife
Crosson,
off.
and Dorsey.
You wanted to do one for a second.
I know, I was just trying. We'll give it to Ms. Breeding since she's.
And
We'll give it to Robin.
self-esteem for me.
We'll give it to Robin. Last one, last second. At this time, we have hearing a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote on,
Are there any others?
do I take them all now, or do I do one and vote?
No, yes, are there any others?
Are there any other nominations for president?
That being said, Mr. Chairman, that with no others being offered, I make a motion that we close the nominations for president.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Closing, do I have to vote on that, right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. That said,
Turn it back over to
Mr. President, congratulations.
Thank you.
You got it. A limited touch of the gavel.
That was tough. All right. And now, asking for nominations will be made for Vice President of the Board of Education. Do I hear any nominations for Vice President?
I would like to nominate Chris Smith.
Second.
All right. Nominated by Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Phil Breeding. Are there any other nominations?
Hearing none, I move make nominations closed for the office of vice president.
I second. All right, all those in favor, you signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right. Chris Smith is our Vice President for 25-26 years.
Executive secretary can have to cast the vote.
Oops, I'm sorry.
I cast a vote on it too? I approve, aye.
Do it again. Every year we ask if we're gonna figure this out.
It's gonna be the first time we did this, right?
No.
That's every year we do the same conversation. And the year Ted leaves is
Next
the
year, I
we're gonna call.
promise I'll watch this.
Watch the video.
I'll know what we did.
I'll come in July.
All right, as for the rest, actually, we take nominations for it, but actually it's the president's prerogative to actually nominate,
Yes.
to do that.
Correct.
And with that, I
Just to appoint me.
You have to appoint him.
do have to put you, where's that one? Did I? I apologize.
That's right.
Oh, yes. All right, newly elected board president, and I appoint Superintendent Dr. Jeffrey Menzer to the position of Executive Secretary of the Board in accordance with Delaware Code.
Check.
Yes. Got your job.
And then you have your nomination for your 2 boards.
All right, so for DSBA, Board of Directors Representative, Mr. Handy, are you willing to do that again?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And then for the alternate, who do we currently have as an alternate?
So currently I am the alternate.
legislative is where who's on legislative for last year?
Robin was
Robin was
our,
alternate, right?
And you were alternate. All right.
we've had discussions about not holding multiple offices.
It's my suggestion that you use these committee positions as learning experience for your board members. So if you have a new board member, being an alternate would be a start.
Right,
I agree.
and we're gonna have a new board member perhaps. I'm
Yeah.
almost wondering if we wanna table these nominations.
That's incorrect. You can't table.
We
To
can't, we have
August?
to do them in July.
You have to?
Yeah, we have to.
Okay.
I can switch them out at any time if I'd like. Is that
Without
correct?
board action, you can't.
Okay, thank you. So for legislative, I'd like to see, Chris Smith, can you run legislative?
Yes.
Who was your main person this past year?
It was Robin.
Who was the alternate?
Alternates,
Keenan.
Keenan.
Keenan would move up there?
Unless Keenan wants to do it.
Keenan, unless you wanna do it, but I know with everything you got going on, I didn't know how you felt about that.
I'm on board, that's what I do.
You're on, you wanna do it?
Yeah, I'm on the board, like, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just wanna make sure with the new school.
That's fine, I'm
Alright.
good, listen,
All right, I'm confused.
I have a commitment.
He means he wants to do legislative.
Great.
You're up.
All right.
You're gonna put you on legislative. We're gonna go from alternate to.
All right, so Keenan will be legislative representative, and then, with that,
Which one's the better one for you, board member?
I would put, my suggestion would be that the new member would go on to DSBA.
That would be it.
I like it.
That would be good.
Ms. Brady?
It's okay, I just need help.
All right, we got you. Ron will
Will
help
help
you.
you out.
That's what we're here for.
So
And
which-
then obviously,
which
for,
one?
you don't want any, right?
Which one?
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah, as you can see, yeah,
Well,
the
so we
eyes,
have to put Robin and fill the vacancy. That's possible.
yeah,
This one, board of directors.
Oh, Chris can do it. Yeah, Chris can do it.
yeah, I guess for me now, I'll be the alternate for legislative. Oh, you, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, it is Chris.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can do
it's Chris Smith. And there we go. So we will have DSBA, will be Robin Handy, alternate for DSBA, Philip Breeding. Legislative will now be Keenan, and then the alternate will be Chris Smith.
Okay, so with that being said, I'll make a motion that we do the following appointments.
Okay. That being said, make a motion, do the following
Read off the names
appointments.
that I just said.
Yep.
Make the following appointments, read off the names.
Make the following appointments, Ronald Handy for DSBA lead, DSBA alternate, Philip Breeding, legislative lead, Dr. Keenan Dorsey, and legislative alternate, Ms. Christine Smith.
Do we have a second?
Do I have a second? Second. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, there you go.
Okay then.
All right, thank you guys for all that. All right. And now it's moving on to adopting Robert's Rules of Orders.
Make a motion that we use the Robert's Rules of Orders as our guideline for our meeting procedures.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, as moved by Mr. Laws, seconded by Ms. Breeding. Are there any questions or comments from the board? With all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
With that being said, this is not a question, but because I feel about Robert's Rules of Order is, can we please check with legal counsel and find out why we can't put that in policy and not have to vote on that every year?
I can't hear.
Okay. He wants me to check with legal to find out if we can make it policy, so we don't have to vote on it every
Well,
year.
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Good question.
I mean,
The entire
that's-
world pretty
that's-
much runs by that.
It should be good.
Yeah.
I think that was.
All right. And now, moving past all the fun yearly stuff. The next agenda item is the consent agenda. The items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board review, including documentation concerning these items that have been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items in the consent agenda generally include routine personnel and business office action and updates, as well as approval of previous meeting minutes and education-related items such as choice and student placements. With that being said, do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
As moved by Dr. Dorsey and seconded by Ms. Smith. Are there any questions or comments from the board? I have no question or comments. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, motion carries. Next up on the agenda is updates and action items, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Menzer for that.
As the board sees, we are seeking the board's approval for an intent to terminate employee number 25-105 as we discussed in executive session.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the intent to terminate as recommended by administration. That would be for employee number 25-105.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. As moved by Mr. Laws and seconded by Ms. Breeding. Are there any questions or comments? No questions or comments from the board. All those in favor, please signify with saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. All right, motion carries. And I think we're going to pause for a second now and go back to public comment for just a minute.
So we're going to cede the floor to Senator Nicole Poore, who has a moment to catch her breath from hustling up from the south from the storm to share something with the community and Mr. Crosson.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. How are you? Good. Good to see so many friendly faces. Hey, how are you?
Ted's sitting here, you know. In case you didn't see him.
I see Ted.
The friendliest of these.
Okay, so John, David? John, okay. So Robin, your boys reached out to me and I thought that was pretty awesome. So I hear you're retiring soon.
Yes, soon.
Soon. Okay. Well, on that note, we got a lot of history about you, and so what we prepared is a Senate tribute. And for those of you that don't know, down in the left-hand corner here is a number. And that number will forever be in the archives in the state of Delaware. So 100 years from now, when your family wants to know more about you, they're going to be able to pull this record. You, of course, had the original. However, it will be in the archives in Delaware. So, why don't you come up front? And I'm going to try not to have my back to everyone.
Oh, just go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're used to
Okay.
We're used to that.
Okay. So, Robin, this tribute is from the State Senate. Be it hereby known to all that myself and the senators have joined together in the 153rd General Assembly in commending Robin Crosson for his distinguished service to the Colonial School District Board of Education. Throughout your tenure, he has generously shared his time, talent, and wisdom, earning the respect and admiration of colleagues, students, and community members alike. Mr. Crosson has dedicated more than 50 years to the Colonial School District, first as a beloved and inspiring teacher, and since 2018 as a committed member of the Board of Education. His unwavering dedication to education and his tireless efforts on behalf of students and families has left a lasting impact on the district. So I find it, as well as my senators, to the most fitting that the Senate recognizes Mr. Crosson as a fine public servant. His exceptional career and notable record of service stands as a testament to the power of dedication, leadership, and integrity, a legacy that will long be remembered and deeply appreciated. So with congratulations and best wishes for a great future, the Senate directs this tribute presented Tuesday, the 8th of July of 2025, as Robin Crosson celebrates his job and a well-done job. So congratulations.
Look at me. Good job.
Yes,
Thank you very
you're
much.
so welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you for making the effort to be here.
Absolutely.
In the storm.
That's
In the
okay.
storm.
Probably a
Thank you,
little
I'm the
bit.
daughter.
Oh, hi, I'm Nicole. I'm so sorry.
She didn't reach
Thank
out.
you for-
I'm so sorry to work on this.
Perfect timing, Don, perfect
She
timing.
likes Carabao.
How dare you.
The sibling
We
rivalry.
noticed where you're sitting too, by the way.
Well, on that note, I'm gonna depart. So nice to meet you. Robin, in all honesty, congratulations. For those of you that don't know, Robin spent quite a few years with my son Nicholas at Leach. And obviously, one of my most favorite cherished places, and I'm looking forward to the new building. Oh, don't you worry.
Yes, we were all looking forward to it.
Don't you worry, I was looking at those line items like, oh, fully funded, okay, okay, we're moving on.
Move on.
So, yes, all right, well, thank you so much for letting me break your meeting tonight,
Thanks for
and
coming, Nicole.
I'm heading to my next event, so,
Gosh.
bye, everyone, good luck.
Thank you.
All right,
Safe travels.
Thank you.
yes, thank you, you're so welcome.
Is it raining up?
Raining, woo.
Jen.
Wow, and please don't anyone take Route 9, yes, we are repaving.
Most of us learned that a long time ago.
Did she go over 3 minutes?
Yeah.
We'll let her go.
I had to hold Ted back there.
Here's the envelope. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, nice diversion. On to the next item. We have an update, or just we wanted to share some numbers as a follow-up to the bricks in the book bag conversation that was led by Ed Steffen, one of our lead visiting teacher and homeless coordinator here in Colonial. And so I asked him just to provide the board with just the numbers of students who are either McKinney-Vento or homeless, or foster care. But then also put some attendance numbers there, because he also works in that space. To give you an idea of McKinney-Vento are families who qualify for homeless. There's a variety of qualifications in terms of being displaced, living in a hotel, like you name it, there's a couple of different buckets there. And then foster children are obviously, which out there in foster care, placed by the state. But I thought the board would like to see some of these numbers, and perhaps, Ed is here with Dr. Woodall, who's supervisor of health and wellness, and Miss Jacqueline, Williams, that's right. I just talking about Dr. Lamb today. Jacqueline Williams, who's also in the works with the homeless families and our students. If you had questions, and I'd like Ed to also share some comments about what the numbers really mean, kind of what it actually looks like for us in the district.
Do you want me to make comments, or does anybody have questions?
Let's go with questions first and see what, and then, because the numbers are pretty, you can stand or sit right up front, doesn't matter.
Falling apart, I don't know that.
Does anybody, Chris, I know you carried the book bag, Chris.
Yeah.
So Chris was the one who kind of got jarred by carrying the book bag. So I don't know if anybody else had some questions.
Is there certain, actually, I think almost your comments might be better to stir questions for us as we're looking at it to know. I have no clue how to compare it on what I'm seeing. Maybe you can help me in what we see and what this kind of tells us about our district or with our kids.
Our district is unique in the sense that we have over 15 motels that accept housing vouchers for those experiencing homelessness within. Christina School District has a similar situation because down at the University of Delaware, those hotels in the area will accept. But if you go down the Route 9 corridor, all the hotels there, I hate to say 100%, but 90% are homeless families living there. Not all are Colonial students. There's Red Clay students, Brandywine, Apo, even some from Sussex and Kent counties get placed up here from time to time, and they will transport back and forth to their schools depending on how long they're going to be here. The big one that popped up into our feeder pattern a couple of years ago during COVID was the Hope Center. There are 467 beds there, around there. Not all of them are families with school-age students, but that was a huge increase for specifically Castle Hills and George Reed, whose homeless numbers tripled after the opening of the Hope Center, because that's the feeder school for the Hope Center. So they are sort of in a different spot right now, getting acclimated into how to support these families. The issue specifically with all the motels, the vouchers are usually a 2-week voucher. After that, depending on your situation, you may get an extension, you may not. So if they don't, after 2 weeks, they're out of the Hope Center, they're still Castle Hill students, but they could be living anywhere in Newcastle County, even Kent County, some of them, in different situations, whether it be another hotel, double up with a friend's family, someone else. The We Connect, I did a presentation that was much longer than what you wanted to see tonight. There are families living in tents. I live right across from an elementary school in Red Clay, and there is a little tent village in the woods. And if you're in the elementary school parking lot, you can see the family living in the tent.
Mr. Stephan, can you repeat what you said? How long are the vouchers good for? 2 weeks?
It's usually a 2 week.
2 weeks.
Usually an
14
initial
days.
2 week.
Mhm.
Now,
And whose policy is that? Is that county, is that state?
it's DHSS is the one giving those housing vouchers. Now, if they're at the Hope Center, they might get connected to another resource that will help extend their stay there or provide them different resources within the state to stay at. If they're just staying at the Route 9 motel, actually a lot of those families end up having someone cover the cost for them. We have some families that work there, and that's how their room is covered. So it's meant to be an emergency type 2 week window to get you situated for 2 weeks, and then after that, figure out how we're gonna extend. The day before Thanksgiving, I was in Newark giving a mother a tent because her 2 weeks were up at the motel there and she had nowhere else to go, and that was the best that we could give her. She actually ended up getting a motel over Thanksgiving, but the emergency plan was we provide her with a tent and sleeping bags.
So maybe add a little bit of the context of like when you're dealing with the families and supporting them, you know, what are some of the resources that you are offering, you and Carolyn and the team, to the best of your ability?
For me, I typically start with helping the schools get them registered and transportation set up. That's the first hurdle that we go over. Carolyn and communities and schools then will help with food, clothing. Clothing's probably the biggest thing that you. Carolyn connected with Operation Warm when we got coats donated to the district. Shoes That Fit gave us 300 pairs of sneakers last year for students.
Yeah, all 400 pairs of shoes.
There's the Lions Club in Newcastle reached out during COVID, and they provided bus passes specifically to William Penn and Castle Hills because they had a connection there, so it was a good partnership.
How do you decide how to set up transportation when they're always displaced?
Setting it up is the easy part. The hard part is
But finding them, how do you find them? Like,
Miles Camacho in transportation, Drew's right-hand man here. I send him the information, he puts it out to bid. There's private van companies that will pick it up, and it's usually based on location. So like there's a van company that will specifically run in New York because they can pick up 10 students in a short period of time, just like a school bus, and get them to their buildings. They're not running from Newark to Wilmington to Bear and all over. They're usually very centralized pickups. And we have 3.
I'm saying, how do you find the families? Like, when they're displaced? Like,
They tell us.
You ever lose
That's,
them? Okay, so,
that's, yeah, they,
okay, so
that's,
they're telling you. Okay.
yeah.
So you're not, I mean, because they can just disappear on you all of a sudden.
And that does happen.
Okay.
With the families who are very transient and don't have a stable place to go, whether it be doubled up with a friend or a family member or a motel or hotel, they do go missing for an extended period of time. And part of what we're trying to do this year is connect communities and schools with these families so that they have someone to reach out to. Even if we've had families who every 3 days move, and it might take 3 days to set a van up because it has to go to bid, they accept it, they call the family, and 2 days later, they're gonna start picking up the student. Well, they've already moved from that address. We gotta go through that process all over again. If we can get them connected with communities and schools specifically, the hope is that time frame is not 3 days every time, that we can do it quicker.
Now, those 3 days for a particular student shows up in your
Attendance.
attendance issues.
They are excused
That's not-
absences until we can until we get transportation established.
They're excused.
Yes, because it's not by their doing that they're not willfully just not coming to school, it's a transportation issue.
Does that fall underneath the chronic absence?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about this bid process?
Either way.
Yeah, so basically with the bid process from transportation aspect, so we work with up to, I think we're up to 10 different van services. When we can service them on our own school buses, we do that as well, so typically in feeder, we can work that out. But many are on the van services, so basically you put the address out to your van services, service the area, and they basically get numbers back to you, and, as far as what that cost would be, you basically get the approval, you give the okay, and then it's at least another 24 hours for the communication to say we're gonna start picking you up tomorrow. So minimal, you're typically at least 48 hours, sometimes as many as 72 business hours. So typically within 3 school days, they're getting picked up.
You can't set that up with the van services, that if you're picking up a student from Newark to William Penn, you can't have that scheduled value set up early on?
Not quite, because it's so sporadic where they're located, and then it depends on the load in their vans that they're actually servicing, whether they even have another seat that's available. So it's normally, once you get rolling with them, we have several very dependable ones that are much faster than the 72. By law and regulation, we basically have those 3 days to get it established. So we want to get it done as quickly as possible, and they do everything they can. But I'd say probably on average, you're talking at least 48 2 business days by the time it's bidded, and then return to the family and say it's about to
Well,
start.
I'm just trying to think, is there a way you can get away from doing the bidding, if you can get the unit cost at the beginning of the year, that if you need van ABC to go over to Newark to pick somebody up in this area, you've got that unit
Yeah.
cost, you can get.
Isn't the problem the state pays the McKinney bid 90%?
Yeah, they pay 90% of the McKinney Vessel, 100% of the Foster, but they actually are, in the last few years, it's been reviewed by the current DOE supervisor of transportation. Basically the cost formula and how that's set up. They've even set up some pilots of how to run those vans. We have gone as far as joking that sometimes it's the Wild West, depending on what van service you get and the number they're throwing back at you that it's gonna cost, because they know we need to get these students to school. I don't wanna say desperation, but it is. We need to get these kids to school. So really in the last year or two, they've really reviewed those policies. So far, state of Delaware doesn't have anything specific to like almost setting up like a funding formula that they have to stick to, but that has been part of the discussion. We're actually currently working with a new van vendor we just began with last year, and their cost formula looks a little different, but more similar to what you're saying, where basically they service an area and they can kind of just say, anybody in this area we can grab. We've only been with them for the first year. We piloted it last year. So we're interested to see what this upcoming year, starts with. We didn't pick them up till about October.
You think the state was going to go into a contract with these different companies and have those unit costs set up from.
Yeah, I can tell you it's a major focus in the last year or two, but has not been for decades. But when you look at the amount of money that's spent throughout the state, it's pretty significant. So it's definitely raising those concerns and saying, let's do what's best for everybody, both in the interest of money and also time. And what's good for our kids, best for our kids.
And one of the big issues with it is the Kent and Sussex counties where it's storming, where it's much more rural.
Yes.
Their van rides are significantly longer and tougher to set up than it is here. I will tell you, Miles, I feel like anybody in Newcastle County, he gets back to me within a day and it's set up and they're picking them up the next day. So if they're staying in Newcastle County area, the turnover's not as long.
Emily, what were you going to add?
Well, I think it's important to say that most of the time it's a capacity issue with the van provider, not necessarily a cost factor.
Correct.
So we're not like waiting to see, can we get a lower price from another van vendor? It's really more the logistics and the capacity of the vendor. And the state has tried to look at, statewide contracts for homeless transportation, but it's so ephemeral, right? The population is moving around all the time that it's really hard to get somebody who is going to commit to a cost when it's sort of impossible to know where they're going to be and so forth. So, and the state also doesn't do the contracts directly, right? So they would, they'd put something out that we could all join onto, but again, that would be difficult because, depending on which district was utilizing it, et cetera. So there's a lot of logistical challenges to try to.
So are we paying for the vans and then the state reimburses us, or the state
Correct.
pays and we
Correct.
get
We get reimbursed.
And every time a new van pops up, we also have to take into account the background checks.
Right.
Because every time we get a new driver, we have to have a new background check. So that also slows down the process sometimes, because if we're adding a van, we have to add a background check.
Understand. So what falls into the chronic absenteeism?
That is something that 15 years now, maybe, it's been like a catchphrase, just students who are missing seat time. So if you're absent for an excused absence, unexcused absences, suspensions, if you're on an approved college visit, it really is taking into account how many days you're missing of instruction within the class.
So this
What's
is
the
days,
threshold?
not individual
The fresh-
students. These are days, not individual students?
No, the numbers there are for the students.
Oh, individual students?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What,
How do you, okay.
How do you calculate?
What defines it? Is it more than one day? Is it more?
It's 10% or 18 days of school year.
Excused or unexcused?
Excuse or
Just
missed time.
missing the school day, considered absent for a day.
So if a student goes on a college trip
Yes.
for to visit a college and whatnot, we're, for lack of a better term, penalizing that student.
No, no, it's still excused, but it's
Yeah.
still, it's still missed time.
It's become a concern.
Yeah, it's missed seat time.
But only if it goes above 18
Oh, yeah.
days per year.
And even if you get to 18, because there are a lot of high school students who are traveling with school-based programs that are gonna miss 18 days. And academically, they're still connected to school. It's really the students who are missing school, but they're not getting makeup work, they're not connected to the school building, they're missing out. And that's what we're trying to look at. Really, the key piece of that is the knowing the story behind those students when they're chronically absent. If we knew, seniors at William Penn are doing college visits, we're not worried about them because academically, they're where they need to be if they're visiting colleges. It's a lot more of the other students who kind of fall through the cracks because mom writes a note, especially here, and I'm gonna be guilty of this at some point. The Monday, Friday on September's because the beach weekends are nice. Race weekend, we have the families that go Thursday, Friday, and they don't come back Monday. Mom and dad write a note, it's an excused absence. That's a significant amount of school time that they've missed, and if it continues each holiday break, by the end of the school year, they've missed 18 days, and they're not engaged with learning or a school-based program missing those days. So that's what we're trying to monitor.
Oh, you go ahead. Definitely, feel free.
Bye.
And a lot of those chronically absent students are gonna also be homeless students because of transportation pieces. If they move frequently, they're gonna fall into that.
So you're
that's-
double dipping on those.
Yeah, that's another negative effect on their academic, not just the trauma of being homeless, but also missing school time.
So we have a total of 318 McKinney-Vennett students in the district.
Over the course of the school year, yes. They all weren't homeless for the entire school year. Some didn't stay with us the entire school year. Some came to us from Sussex County usually that told transfer to the home meeting register.
We don't get any funding from the state for those students.
Foster care, can they also be McKinney-Vento? Or have you split them out? Were they,
Foster care
they
used to-
were McKinney-Vento for a while?
They used to be connected. DOE separated them because of funding purposes, so
Okay.
different pots of money, but I think there was 5 students this year that were McKinney-Vento at some point earlier in the year, and then they went into the
And then
foster
they
care
went to
system. It's not as common as you might think. We've had students who exited foster care and returned to a parent who were living at the Hope Center. Because being homeless isn't a reason to not have custody of your children. If they were stable and they were able to support their kids, they get them back.
So I think, the reason we asked Ed to be a little bit more informal, because it's a little bit hard to capture what he just described, because it is so, there's so many different stories out there. Each one of these 318 has a different story that it's captured in, we have people boots on the ground working to support the families the best we can, given some very difficult situations that they're facing. And I think, when you hear the books and the bricks in the book bag, these are the folks, the 3 right here, Sherry, Carolyn, and Ed, they're the front lines with Sam and Janae, our visiting teachers, working with families to get students in school despite the obstacles. And these are pretty high numbers, comparatively speaking, across other districts in the state. So we do have a pretty high population of McKinney-Vento and foster care, comparatively speaking. It's and it's arduous work, and it's difficult, and sometimes, you just keep working, moving forward, you just don't give up, and that's one thing you know, Ed's been with us for several years in a variety of roles. Is it
20?
Yeah, visiting teacher, you know, and then the homeless coordinator landed in a spot where Ed was, you know, passionate about helping families, communities and schools. We got a grant that we brought in Carolyn, and, you know, we definitely have a group, we have a team, so it's not something that's on the side. So I think that's why it's important.
And the big piece too, that Miss Carolyn is working out of district office right through that window. There's a CIS staff member at each building that she's working with, and we're connecting our homeless students with them as well. So it's a network that we're trying to.
And that's where we've been fortunate to be able to utilize for various funds to support a communities and schools person in each school. It helps keep that network going. But this year, I know communities and schools presence, attendance is going to be their focus across the state. So they're going to be zeroing in on student attendance. So Ted, the 20 plus unexcused, maybe not so much the chronic, because sometimes the chronic do have things going on that we're aware of, but these unexcused ones where we can't get them, we need to get them in. And so there's going to be a big push on student attendance this year from communities and schools.
And a lot of those are going to be overlapping with homeless and attendance.
Yeah, these are.
Because they have to have 10% of their caseload has to be a homeless student and then an attendance issue as well. So they have the whole gamut of.
This grant that you just mentioned, what are the origins of that grant?
It was an ARPHCY, but I got that out clean. After COVID, all the.
Federal?
Yes, well, federal to the state, we got the grant through DOE. We had to apply, and the numbers were based on the number of homeless students identified over a 3-year span. So, like, we got 160,000, Red Clay got 200, like, the big districts up north got most of the funding.
Is that something that you can reapply for?
DOE has a different fund, it's not under that, it's a much more specific, it's a 100-page application, and only a few districts end up with that.
So that was a COVID era grant, so they're not offering it anymore.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just looking at McCullough, looking at, I mean, it's a middle school, but for chronic absence, do somebody go in there and focus in like, okay, why is this particular school so high for a middle school?
They got on board with it this year with an attendance team, and they have someone from Nemours, their counselors, their visiting teacher, one of the administrators. They meet regularly once a month to review all that, and they have made a big impact on identifying what the causes are for some of these students missing, and now they're working on trying to support them so that they aren't missing school. So they realized the need, and they've adapted to try and support that.
And is any of it due to things that happen in the community while they're not in school?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes there are students who are avoiding each other for different reasons, yes.
Now, with these numbers, you're looking at like chronic absences about 24-25% of the entire student population. And I'm seeing like 13 to 14% for 20 plus excused absences. To me, when I look at this without comparing it to other districts, that seems extremely high.
Unfortunately not.
Then that's where I was going to ask, because I'd love to see if there's data or just knowing, is that comparable to the other districts here in the northern part of the county? Because I know southern part of the county is going to probably look a little different. Or am I wrong, the southern part of the county pushing the same numbers?
Aberquinimic's growth has made them sort of different because they'll have some schools that are worse than our numbers and they'll have others that aren't, but they're leveling out in different buildings. Nationally, our numbers are pretty consistent with what is going on nationally. I just participated in a webinar a couple weeks ago through Attendance Works, which is the big conglomerate that everyone's using. And there were people from all 50 states involved. And we are, in Delaware and in Colonial specifically, ahead of the curve in the ability to have the data at hand. They can't even generate these numbers. These numbers, Dr. Menzer asked me, I was able to pull them up in 5 seconds. I put the dates in, boom, threshold report, there it is. There's other states that can't even do that, so they don't even know what the problem is. So we are ahead in Delaware and Newcastle County specifically because of Data Service Center. That's who we use. They have a program, Truancy Tracker, that is great for quick numbers like that.
But to expand on Chris's question, what percent, our percentage as a district as a whole compared to other districts, how do we stand?
I don't know the other districts specifically, but the 20% is usually that common ground.
And so you're telling us that our total numbers we have across there, we're 20% of our district has these issues?
It's unfortunate.
Which actually is not correct, because there's double dipping in numbers.
What do you mean?
Because he's got chronic absence also into that number also
Correct.
into the
Right.
20 plus unexcused
So
absences.
you're counting by incident, yes, but by student, it could be a little less.
And I'd like to know if it's possible to get those numbers to compare against other districts, and if so, I'd like that sent to the board. If you're able to get it.
That might be tough.
I don't know if I mean, I can ask some of my colleagues that might give it to me off the record.
So I said if,
Yeah.
but I'd like to know.
It's not part of the report card,
Yeah.
online DOE report card?
You can do the on-track attendance through that Delaware report card to be able to compare each of the districts.
I'd like to
We
know
can
where we
pull
sit
that
with that. And then,
Sure,
We can pull that.
you're on, sure.
Yep, I got it.
Well, you would think that our district is going to be a little bit more on the high side because of the level, the number of transients we have in the district.
and it's, yeah, and I like.
It would not shock me if we're not, if we're pretty consistent with everybody else. And I was, after COVID, the big thing is folks don't feel like they need to go to school.
Yeah.
I was able to work remotely, Mike and I worked remotely, my dad's working remotely 3 days a week, I can stay home and pick up on work. And that's, you know,
You have truancy numbers in here?
active truancy cases, no,
What's that number look like?
it's low.
Is it?
The truancy process is not one that has been very helpful recently. When they closed JP 10 to build the new Delaware State Police Barracks, the truancy court moved from there to downtown. The judges at the JP court here would always call it therapeutic court, and we would have CAS evaluations for mental health, checks for students, drug and alcohol screenings, and then implement plans that they would call, Crossroads, that's the one right there in Newport. They came to court with us all the time. There's a drug and alcohol one right by the Italian stone place there.
Not net. Soda?
I'll remember tonight at about 1 o'clock.
Don't call me.
What is it? No, but that's one that we used to use as well.
Connections.
There was a few that have dwindled down. Now the court hasn't done much of that in the last 3 years that they've moved.
You didn't feel it was successful though when it was going on?
At JP 10, yeah, it was.
You did?
It was much more successful. And if we went, because we knew the students, we knew their issues, and we could go right in and ask the judge, we need a CAS evaluation. There's anxiety, there's something going on, we need to know the root cause of. And we would get the CAS evaluation back after a month, done through Division of Health and Social Services, usually University of Delaware interns, so it was a win-win for everybody. And we could implement specific supports at school and through the state. That doesn't happen as much anymore.
Do you feel there is a way to bring that back?
Through the courts, I'm not confident on that.
They made a conscious decision to do that, move it from JP
Yes.
court to town.
Truancy court has,
That got jettisoned several years ago. There was a
Yeah.
big controversy around the validity and the reason for doing that.
yes,
And they did it anyway, and they're now kind of reaping what they sowed a little bit in terms of the outcomes that we're getting.
yes. And that's across the state, well, not across Newcastle County.
Newcastle County.
Sussex and Kent still operate a little differently court-wise. They're happier with their court system than the visiting teachers in Newcastle County, but I don't know that it's significantly better than what we experience here.
That's not something where we can speak with somebody to ask them to reverse that mindset.
We were involved in that at the outset, and we didn't get too far.
Talking to the judges through truancy court, there was someone high up in the court system who they were saving money and they were gonna go this route, and they moved them downtown because the line that we were given was all the supports are within the courthouse downtown. You can get all that within the building, but they're not utilizing And Aquila was the drug rehab.
Does anybody else from the board have any questions? Mr. Handy?
Is there a way without going through the course to get some of these evaluations done that will help out? Because if the court is the holdup, is there a way around that so we can get service to the students?
We've been asking that question for a while, because why do we need to go to court and get them involved if we can do the CAS evaluation ourselves? The problem is the funding for it. The tests aren't cheap, and then paying someone to actually administer them. It would be great if there was a nonprofit that would do it and we could just refer students to it, but that doesn't exist right now.
It would be interesting, that we need it right now, but it'd be interesting just to see, and I'll just use William Penn for instance. If William Penn's 20, and I'm rounding off numbers here, 2,400 students, we've got 56 McKinney-Vento students there, what's that percentage? And the same thing for all of them all the way across. Just know what those percentages are.
Sure.
Yeah,
We could use it on the static data from last year, the data that's here.
Just out of,
Absolutely. And I can get you some more info on if any risk about truancy cases, I can give you that update, we were actually just compiling all of those lists, this past week, so we'll be able to give you some updates on active truancy cases as well.
and the schools that have significantly less attendance and homeless and foster care are our smaller elementary schools, and they are much more community-based, and there's not a lot of movement, and even for, like, Cutting Bedford's one of the schools I support. If a student misses a bus, they're not getting down there as easily as someone who misses the bus at Wilmington Manor and can cut through their neighbor's backyard and get to the building. So some of it's just simple logistics where you're living.
so that kind of stops us from being able to spread the numbers of the students around to the different schools, is what you're saying.
It's, yes, and that's been historical. I've been with this since Mel Gardner retired, and
He's saying we'll know where.
He is still saying.
Ms. Breeding, you have anything else?
No.
Ms. Smith?
No, thank you.
Mr. Wells?
I'm good.
Dr. Lewis?
No.
Cross?
No, I should say that we commend you for the work you're doing. It's gotta be some of the hardest work, and we thank you for it.
I appreciate that. If you get to the point where you get a little callous to
I
the stories.
can imagine.
Yeah.
Just to get through.
I like being educated on stuff like this, because it's, sometimes we don't see the inner workings of what you guys deal with this, and don't be scared to bend my ear. I'm sure the rest of the board can say the same thing, because Jeff will hate me saying this. I don't work for the district. I don't mind making somebody angry and yelling at somebody and say what's going on. I represent the district in a certain way, but I also have no clue fighting for the good fight.
The one thing that's missing from these numbers that you can't really see anywhere is the students who were homeless 2 years ago or in foster care 2 years ago who now are stable, but that trauma doesn't go, just like the backpack, it doesn't go away.
And sometimes it will go down to the siblings in school as well, so.
Ed, Carolyn, and Sherry, thanks for being here this evening, and, send that follow-up data directly to the board, and just CC, the admin team up here, so we have the same information. And if she sends it and you have questions, always feel free to reach out and ask questions, you all do that well,
We like percentages. We should drop an extra row or column for us. We appreciate it.
Spreadsheets are good for that.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much.
The next agenda item is the FY '26 tax rate, and I will turn the floor over to Ms. Falcon, our Chief Operating and Financial Officer, for that presentation and conversation and consideration of action on the tax rate.
Okay. Bear with me while I get this situated. Okay. Is everyone okay if I stay seated?
Yes.
All right. it's not often that my presentations are a lighter subject, but unfortunately tonight, that is the case, because this is a little bit less wrenching than our homeless student population. So this is part 2 of our tax reset conversation, and I'm gonna figure out how to move my presentation. Here we go. So I'm gonna fly through this because this is a recap of the recap I gave last month. But basically, we go through this process every year. There are the 4 different components of our operating tax rate. And the rate is charged on every $100 of assessed value. So this process is in line with our normal annual process. The difference this year is that we have gone through a reassessment. Basically, I think at this point, everyone in the room is familiar with the reassessment that has been occurring statewide. Kent County implemented theirs last year. Sussex County and Newcastle are implementing it this year. So basically every property up and down the state has been evaluated, and a new rate was determined that is supposed to bring it from the early 80s or 70s into what is supposed to be reflective of 2024 market value. And this was the result of a lawsuit that was brought forward. So the process for our tax rate this year does look a little different than normal, because overlaying with it is this assessment process, or the reset process from reassessment. So last month, I gave you information on what we knew at the time. As of today, as of right now, yesterday morning, Newcastle County sent an updated file out to all of the districts with some of the data issues that we talked about last month, updated and corrected or accounted for. So last month we talked about exemption amounts for seniors and residents with disabilities. Those amounts have been updated, and those updates were included in this new file. And there was a data issue found with condominium properties where the values were double counted inadvertently. So that was cleaned up and corrected, and that was put out. So those issues have been fixed. The appeals information still has not played through. So we were not expecting that to resolve by this month. So that is still an outstanding issue. And then the final thing is that the Newcastle County tax pool, there was resolution for 2026. The pool was not eliminated, but basically epilogue language was put into the bond bill that freezes the allocations. So rather than actually going through a formulaic determination every month, what the Department of Education is going to do is basically say, this is how much each district contributed into the tax pool last year, so that's what we're going to put in for 26. And then each district is going to get out of the tax pool exactly what they got out last year.
That's statewide.
No, that is just Newcastle County.
Okay.
So that basically freezes the dollar amounts that we saw last year for the tax pool into 26.
This is the first time they've done this since what year?
The first time they've done reassessment?
No, the allocation, deciding that.
So the allocations in the tax pool had been frozen before this since 2012.
Okay.
So the revenue numbers were being increased. So any revenue that was being generated on that first 46.8 cents was going into the pool, but how it was being redistributed had not been updated since 2012. So any enrollment fluctuations had not been accounted for. So that basically we're kind of, again, pressing pause, not just on the really kind of moving away from the formula itself and just pausing on the dollar amounts that moved this past year. so that the formula doesn't have to be updated, since that would have required legislative action that we ran out of runway for, so that one will need to be revisited in an upcoming year to figure out how it gets handled in the long term. So what we still don't know. As I mentioned, the appeals process has not concluded yet, and again, it was not expected to be concluded. I think they've got appeals going into the fall for the resolution for all of those parcels. Another big thing that was out there and I talked about last month that really there's no way to know in advance is how will these changes impact the collection rate that we see when the county sends out their bills. Traditionally, our collections have been, above 98%. Is there going to be a fluctuation in what we see? That there's just no way to predict that because we haven't seen a reassessment in 40 years. So no one knows what to expect. And then, go ahead.
Wait. You're saying the county hasn't finished all of their process yet between the appeals and all that kind of stuff?
They haven't finished the appeals process.
It's my understanding Newcastle County's sending out tax bills this week.
I have to get a rate to them by Thursday, yes, so that they can send those bills out, correct. So
they're not, since we haven't sent our rate in yet, they haven't calculated what our bills are gonna be.
if I don't get them a rate by Thursday at 8 o'clock, the bill will go out with our old rate. And everyone will pay 400% more, or, it'll stay at $2.29, and no one will pay those bills, because that'll be way wrong. So, what the county is saying is that if, and I can't say that this is an official statement, but in conversations with the county, what they have indicated is that they are telling folks, even if you have a pending appeal, pay the portion of the bill that you believe to be accurate, because penalties and interest accrue. So if you are appealing $20,000, $30,000 of your assessed value, their recommendation is pay what you believe you owe based on the value that you think is reasonable. That way, whatever the outcome is, you're not hit with penalties and interest on everything. If you lose, there's penalties and interest on the unpaid portion, but if you've paid the majority of it, then you don't have as much.
If
So,
they win, are they refunding it or just holding it as a surplus for the next year?
that is a great question, and I don't believe that they've actually made a decision on that yet.
Part of that is our money.
We're not gonna do that money back.
I assume that, but I feel the need to ask it.
We did have a conversation with the county on that, and we were basically asked to come to consensus in Newcastle County because they can't do different things for different districts, and we have not come to consensus on that. So I'm not sure where those conversations are gonna go. If refunds aren't issued, then basically they would put a credit on the account that would sit there, and be less you've got to pay in a future year. So.
That's what they do for solar.
Yeah. So the new wrinkle or the new update or factor that we're looking at since the last meeting is that the federal government has decided to withhold a portion of our federal grant funding for the FY26 school year. As you can see, the share of the $7 billion nationally for Colonial equates to about $1.3 million. And that is our Title II funding, Title III funding, and Title IV funding. That those three grants make up the $1.3 million. That is right now at risk of not coming through and being available for us for this upcoming school year.
Now, we gotta talk about it for a second. Even if we get the funding, it comes to us with a delay, from what I've read, we're not gonna be able to use it. So what do? Just give it back at that point, or do we hold it and does that carry over?
I think whether or not we can use it depends on how long the delay is. And I will be very clear up front in saying I do not have all the answers on the machinations at the federal level. What I've heard is that there is a clock that is ticking at the federal level that if the money doesn't go out the door by, and I've heard both the end of August, and I've heard the end of September. But if the Department of Education doesn't send the money to the states to be distributed to districts, by sometime in the near future, the Department of Education loses the ability to send the money out and it reverts back through some automatic process at the federal level. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know all the mechanics of that. I don't know what the likelihood is. We did have a conversation with, last week with Secretary Martin. Governor Meyer was actually on the call, as well as Majority Leader Brown. And while they didn't have a ton of information to share beyond, what sort of hit the news, they did indicate that, they've been in contact with the Attorney General. Possible legal action is being discussed, and they are kind of throwing the full weight of state government behind trying to make us whole in whatever way they can, whether it's a lawsuit or I do know that there was some contingency funds that were appropriated for this type of action, not specific for education, but just sort of a federal.
You talking about our contingency line items, or are we talking about state?
At the state level.
Okay.
Yeah, the state set aside some amount of money that I don't have off the top of my head, as a kind of federal contingency. Made no guarantees that we would see any or all of that, but they are looking at all the tools that they have in the toolbox to help help us through this situation. To try to, one, get it sent to us through legal action or whatever means they can, and then if it is actually withheld and it doesn't come through, looking at what other options we might have. So.
My next question is obviously going to be for upcoming years and how we predict this and
You can't predict.
I
think looking at the big picture, that's always going to be a possibility, and we need to adjust to the lower cost. Would be my personal thought on that.
We need to
Adjust,
downward.
probably. Now, what does that? How do we adjust it? That's all. That's going to be the big point of that.
You're suggesting reducing our spending.
Yeah, that's the push on why the federal government is pushing some of that stuff back. It's the whole thing on all the spending issues that were out there for whatever reason.
if we don't have those items in the line, as line items, and we do get the funding, how do we use that funding then? Are we allowed to? I don't know. What are the rules that are tied? It's Title I money, that's.
Well, Title I actually was not,
Oh,
so
sorry.
the Title I money that you think of as the big grant that, that funds a lot of positions, et cetera, that was not actually impacted. Title I Part C is a much smaller program for migrant students. That was part of what was eliminated. I think we might have gotten migrant funds 1 year in the last 5, but it's a very, very small portion. It is not the big Title I bucket that everybody thinks of. So that was not impacted.
So what's the 1.3 that is impacted?
Title II,
Oh,
which is mainly professional development. We do have 2 positions sitting on that grant, and actually 60% of that grant budget is salaries and OECs between the positions and other you know, timesheets and, time that we're giving to teachers to, you know, to do professional development activities. Title III supports our English language learners, you know, both the students through kind of direct interventions that assist them, and then also supports for our English language teachers to, you know, give them the supports and curriculum integration and all that kind of stuff happens with Title III. And then Title IV really is, it's sort of like funds for providing a well-rounded education. So music education, a lot for libraries, student leadership. There's a lot of, you know, activities around student leadership that we fund out of Title IV. Music and arts, I said. So, you know, these are activities that would not go unnoticed if we had to discontinue them. And I think from a budgetary standpoint, the shock and the timing of it is what's more concerning. You know, if there is a desire to overall, you know, reduce or limit the amount of federal funds coming to schools, if that's the desire of the administration, then I would argue do it in an organized fashion that gives districts the time to plan for an orderly decline in funding. This is not orderly, this is chaotic. This doesn't give us any time to plan, and you know, cuts, we will have to make cuts if this funding doesn't come through, and those cuts will unfortunately be felt in classrooms directly.
But you just said a few minutes ago that the state has a contingency.
And we've not been guaranteed any of that money.
And that's a contingency for 1 year, and we don't know if the contingency is 1.3 or if we're getting 300,000.
Right.
Or if we're getting 3,000.
Or if we're getting anything, to be honest, because it is not education specific. So, you know, some of the other policy changes or, you know, direction coming out of federal government may have bigger implications for other state programs that take priority over the cuts that we're talking about right now. So it's impossible to know whether or not the state contingency money is going to be put into play to assist this at all.
And at this point, so if we get through for this year, but then we have to start preparing for future years of this potential loss of these grants with it. But maybe we can because we have our own contingency line item as well.
Yes.
That I know we keep, and I know
It's $100,000.
I thought it was like 400,000. I was like really hoping. I remember that line item moving around here and there. Maybe that was just COVID line
And
item.
it's impossible to predict whether or not this administration is going to attack Title I and the larger entitlements under Title II in future years.
Correct.
What are we actually voting on this time?
You are voting on the actual tax rate that we are going to send to Newcastle County.
But that would include this?
So this is, what I'm laying out here is sort of the risk and the uncertainty that we are managing right now in terms of our fiscal health.
But it's not necessarily part of the tax rate.
No, it is not part of the tax rate, but if we lose over $1 million
It'll
in federal
change.
funding,
Yeah.
then our financial
Well, let's
health.
say we lose it, what do we do then? We have to assess this tax rate again, or we can't?
No,
Not till next year.
no, not,
No, not until another reassessment.
No. The tax rate, correct me if I'm wrong, the tax rate, we look at that and make a projection or approve whatever our tax rate is gonna be each July.
not the operating portion. But we can only reset the operating portion and have the flexibility that you have tonight after a reassessment has been completed. So
And as part of referendum.
the referendum is actually, in addition to what's in the mix here, but a referendum doesn't have to be part of, right, and if we pass a referendum, then obviously that impacts, but that's predetermined by the taxpayers, right? We go out and say, this is the rate we want, they approve it or don't approve it, and we bake that into the rate as appropriate. This is, after a reassessment is the only time the board has the discretion to set a rate that has some flexibility to it.
So, Robin, I think to answer your question, I think Emily's putting this number up there for us to take into consideration when we're looking at our overall tax rate. What if we don't get this?
Assuming.
Yes, it's like an assumption.
But it's looking that way.
You know, my crystal ball on this stuff broke a long time ago. I really, because we had the budget freeze, a couple months back, you know, when they first kind of settled into office, and that lasted less than a week, and then the money started flowing again, and you know, I can tell you that they clawed back our ESSER dollars, and DOE still hasn't gotten full payment on the spending. We spent money because they gave us a tiny little grace period of an additional, I think it was 20 days, and we were able to get the money out the door knowing that the window was closing. They're still questioning our expenses. So the department still hasn't gotten the federal money to support the expense that we made and sent out to a vendor already. So, and that's not even on here. And ironically, the number associated with that expense is about $1.3 million as well. So if that doesn't come through, and the state forces us to cover that cost, then that doubles the number here that is potentially at risk.
And our contingency fund is 100,000.
Yes.
And we ran into the same issue 10 years ago, is when they pulled from the backgrounds. Somewhere in that.
2008.
More than 10, because I
No,
wasn't under me.
it was a while.
So this is something.
So this is not, my point is, this is not the first time that we've faced this and had to
No,
make,
it's not.
and we've had to make adjustments in our operations.
And isn't it true, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, we set this tax rate this time, if things improve by next year, you've actually reduced the tax rate by a penny or two, you know, in the past. If that's, you know, appropriate.
So,
Did that last year.
Yeah.
Not the
2024.
Yes.
right,
Correct.
the distinction is that there is actually sort of a legal gray area as to whether or not we can reduce the operating rate itself. Because that is, there's certain parameters by, that it can be changed, and what we could do is, again, we could adjust the other rates that we have, you know, that you have authority over, to basically raise less revenue in those areas and allow our operating expenses to subsidize those areas, to sort of draw down the excess funds if none of these, you know, gloom and doom scenarios come true.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions, and I'll keep asking more as the next month and so on. Sorry. Thank you.
Next month,
As we go
there's no next
through.
month.
No, I mean in regards to the continuation of that specific.
Oh, yeah. This is-
It's not going away.
Yeah, I know.
You have to do something soon.
There's that fly.
Yeah, we have to make a decision tonight. I need a motion on something tonight. So, so this is updated from last month. This number, and I don't expect anybody had the number from last month memorized, but it's $223 million less than I showed last month. That is the combination of the exemption correction issue and that double counting with condominium parcels that I mentioned. So we were at 396 last month in terms of an increase over last year. Now we're at 388. And again, that 15 point.
You lost it there.
Go ahead.
For fiscal year 2025, we had the property value in Colonial for $3 billion.
Yes.
Rounded off. Now with the new appraisals, we're at $15 billion.
Correct.
How do you come up with a decrease of 220?
She shared numbers last month.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
So last month's number did not have the updated exemption amounts. So the file that Newcastle County gave me that I was working from last month had data issues in it that have since been corrected. And that correction resulted in a decline or a decrease of 220 million.
So you went from 15.7.
Yes.
Down to 15.4.
Yep.
Yes.
Correct.
Rounding off.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm with you.
Yes.
What was the percent? Wasn't it 511% last month? That was the overall increase from previous year?
No, I think it was 396%.
Oh, that's the
Property,
number
that's
that,
the property value.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
remember, the county-wide is I think the 511.
That's what it is.
This would be colonial specific.
We're three, yeah. so-
Well, and I believe the county actually updated that because their number was, the new value was 511% more than the old value. So the increase was actually 411%. Right, so it's a 388% increase over last year, which means that the 26 base is 488% more than the 25 base.
Which is ridiculous.
It's math.
Well, I know, but it's still ridiculous.
All right, so we either vote yes or no, we're not negotiating what the rate is, it's either we vote
No,
for
we
it
have,
or
we have four options we're gonna look at.
Oh,
You're skipping ahead.
I'm sorry.
You're trying to get to the end.
Yeah, Robin, we're milking the last meeting out, man.
So, this is a snapshot or a snippet of the spreadsheet that was sent to me yesterday morning, that I worked through in kind of landing on the new number that I am using as the assumed base. You can see the 15.4 million, which is what I had on the last slide. You can see up here in the orange, this is the classification of the type of parcel, the row label on the far left there. Left, yeah. So anything with an E in front of it is considered an exempt property. I don't know why, but the file, as you can see, has $20 million between exempt commercial properties and exempt residential properties that have a taxable amount included. I don't know why those weren't backed out when the data issues were being addressed, but they're still there, so I'm backing them out because my assumption is the way that they're classified, I'm not gonna be able to actually get any payments from them. Then you'll see the number that is at risk on appeal, $528 million. I have more details on the next slide on that number, but I just wanted to show you the math on how I'm getting from the 15.4 down to the 14.87.
So do you have a key someplace on what the row labels are, what A equals what, C equals what?
Apartment, commercial, exempt farm, exempt residential, farm, industrial, residential, and U is,
Unknown.
I'd have to look up U. I do have a key, but it's not included here. It might be unknown.
Could be, yeah.
Yes,
Utility?
could be. I'll confirm.
When they get an increase, they're gonna pass that on to.
So, because that appeals number is a pretty big nugget, $500 million is, I wanted to spend a little bit of time for you guys to understand how I came to that number, because that number has assumptions built into it that I just want to make the room aware of. So, the county did not require property owners who were requesting an appeal to identify a requested value. So I could just say, I want an appeal because I don't think this is right, but I was not required to say, I want X as my preferred or requested value. So of the data that I got from the county, which included every parcel in our district that requested an appeal, a formal appeal, there was an informal process that I don't have the data on. 826 parcels requested an appeal. Over 500 of those parcels did not have a requested value. So I don't have any data on how much of a reduction those owners are expecting or looking for. And you can see by the second row here, the value of the parcels that had a requested value was 275 million. The total value of the parcels with no ask and no way to know what they were expecting on the outcome, is 1.2 billion. So 82% of the risk is on the side where I don't have firm data on what they are expecting, okay? So,
Can I stop real quick?
Sure.
Has the county told you what they've roughly been giving to these people?
no. Because they haven't
I know,
decided enough
I'm
of
asking
them.
questions, I know, yeah, but
I don't think they've decided enough of them to really have firm information to give us.
this is just the Wild
That
West.
kind of leads to another question. You got 82% of our residents, okay, have filed appeals, and they don't know what the requested value is. Is that, do you think, I know you don't know, but do you think that the rest of the county has the same type of spread?
So I just want to clarify what the 18 and the 82 represent. That is a percentage of, so in total, $1.5 billion of, if you add up the parcels, the value of the parcels that had some sort of appeal, it's $1.5 billion
In our district.
in our district. Of that 1.5, 1.2, almost 1.3 of that amount did not have any sort of requested value associated with it.
I understand that.
That's what the 82% is. It's not that 82%.
So it's a wild card.
Yes, but it's
So
not
my
that
question-
82%
I
filed an
understand.
appeal. Okay.
My question is, if the rest of the districts in Newcastle County have that somewhat of that same type of split, how in the heck can Newcastle County go out and say, we're gonna go out with these new rates and everything when they don't have the interest fees?
Because the rate has nothing to do with the appeal.
It does. In the end of the day, it does. Now, I understand the 388%, 400%, because how can they kick in that new rate and raise it to those things when they don't have the answers to their own damn question?
That's a county question. I can't answer that.
I know you're the messenger on this, but my point is,
Not really the messenger, she's the worker trying to figure it out. She's not speaking on behalf of the county,
Right.
let's just be clear.
but
She said, listen,
Newcastle County is not prepared to go out with these new numbers. Point blank.
That's correct.
I'm not
big-
gonna
Yeah,
affirm or deny that. That's not for me to say.
I tell you, it left us
that,
making guesses that is not fair to John Q. Public.
That's my point.
I
They need
completely
to have all
agree.
their ducks in a row and come out with and say, here's the numbers, here's what we need to go to, and they don't have that. So how can they implement this new tax rate, whatever you wanna call it, okay? And they don't have all this, and they had to know that they were gonna have these appeals and everything beforehand.
we're voting on incomplete information.
We are, but we still have
That's
to vote.
accurate.
That's
I agree with
accurate.
that.
Yes.
I
and
would
that's
agree.
why, to be clear, Emily has spent a lot of time thinking through the assumptions last month's presentation, preparing for this, waiting until the last minute on the data file to make the best decision we have to make in order to continue to collect responsibly our revenue from the tax base. And so, agreed, Ted, agreed, Chris, but we're going to be faced with a decision that's going to be based off of inaccurate or incomplete data. Incomplete data,
And, yeah,
not inaccurate, but incomplete.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's known.
Do we know how many they're denying straight out and not giving,
Nope.
not
No, they're not gonna
cons-
use it.
I have
conceding
no
something?
data on how the appeals are playing out. I really
And the
don't.
assumption that we discussed last month was 34%?
Right, so,
34% of what?
Can you
So-
explain that part?
yes. So in order to come up with an assumption around what was at risk for these properties here, and of course, it's not gonna highlight this column.
523.
Right, these, the 523 parcels that have no at-risk number associated with them. I took what was at risk among the known parcels. So the 303 properties that did request something, on that number was 34%. On average, they wanted a 34% reduction in the assessed value that they were looking at. So I applied that 34% number to the unknown parcels. I am I'm pretty sure that all of my colleagues in Newcastle County landed on the same methodology to cost out or to provide some sort of at-risk estimate of their unknown parcels. I will tell you that our unknown percentage is higher than some of the other districts. The numbers were kind of all over the place, but I think so, I can't remember which district was which at this point, but some of them, it was 60% of them had a value associated with them, and only 40% did. So that varied. But I applied the 34% to the parcels in this column. That is how the $435 million number is derived.
34% of the 1.2.
Correct. So if my number is right, there's $2.2 million at risk in terms of collections, right? That $435 million, if I just take a revenue neutral tax rate, just to do a calculation, there's $2.2 million at risk if I get this number, if this number is right. If everything in this column got wiped out, which I realize is unlikely to happen. Can't say it's a possibility of zero, but it's very unlikely. If everything went away in that 1.2 million, we would be out almost $6.6 million in revenue annually, right? So this is the guess of what the revenue is that's at risk in these unknown parcels. This right here is an absolute worst case catastrophic scenario.
Okay.
That has to be added to the known, right? So the range is somewhere between 2.7 and $8 million annually. Right? You drive a truck right through that, so.
And that's you just assuming off of numbers that people have asked for, not, because we have no data from what the county is actually conceding in these reassessment appeals.
Chris, I actually appealed mine on the first appeal, which is the easy one. The second appeal is hard, it's almost impossible. But on the first appeal, I asked for an adjustment of a reduction of 15%. And I had a 15-minute window to talk to the person, and I did. He said, we'll let you do in 2 months, and he did, and he just reduced it 50%.
He gave you exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, he said exactly what I asked for.
So it sounds like a good assumption is whatever they're asking for, 34%. If they're just given.
As an average.
Yeah.
Right, but.
I now might feel more comfortable by your assumption.
But
I know
I'm
we
gonna
were
remind
discussing
you,
I was
I'm gonna
also
remind you
told,
that my assumption,
is off of 18%.
I was also told that Tyler Technologies, because my son's up in Concord Township where they also did it, that Tyler Technologies tended to overvalue lower priced homes and undervalue higher priced homes. And maybe they were just, making adjustments based on that. I don't know exactly how that works out because that's just one case.
Well, that's more information than the county gave us, so we appreciate it. Go on, Nicole.
right, so again, the 34% number is based in an estimated or an educated guess, but it is a guess. And the risk is that if the unknown parcels, the parcels with no value outperform the parcels with a requested value, and by outperform I mean if they win at a higher percentage or they're successful, more successful, then that $435 million could increase. So that's where that the $528 million adjustment for appeals came from. All right, so now we get into the brass tacks and what Robin's been waiting for. What are the options? So this is, we're focusing on, the options here are really focused on the operating portion of the rate. What I did with the other three components, which I'll flip to it here because I'm talking about it. Normally, I have a process where the rate is sort of set, and I look at where things are falling, and I kind of adjust up or down based on where we're gonna land with projected revenue and expected expenses. But because it's not an apples to apples comparison, what I did was really focus in on what are the expenses, what is the revenue that I know we're gonna need based on expected expenditures, and also accounting for any carryover dollars, or excess funds that we had from previous years. Because I really did wanna minimize the fluctuations in these rate categories so that we could really kind of focus on the operating side of the house. So, so this does look different than it normally does. But the three rates, when you add them together, you're looking at 8.55 cents for all three of these rates. With debt service and tuition tax, if you zero in on the amount of revenue I was anticipating last year and the amount of revenue I'm asking, or what's associated this year, both of those are slightly down. And the main reason there is not because our expenses are increasing, or I'm sorry, our expenses are not decreasing, but we have carryover balances in those areas where I can draw the balance down so that we don't have to generate quite as much revenue. For the match tax, that one went slightly up. The General Assembly added additional money again for enhanced minor cap, and knowing that that is something that we desperately need, I wanted to make sure we matched that full amount. So that prevented me from being able to keep it neutral or bring it down, and we didn't have as much carryover in that category. So it's a slight increase in revenue ask, but all told, we're looking at 8.55 cents.
And what is our number today for that?
If we added up those three, 7 cents for debt service, 10 cents for match, and 29, I think, for tuition. So, 29 and 10 and 7.
That's 39, 46.
See, look, 39, 40, I don't know. That's why I don't do math like that. It makes me look
So
slow,
we're at 46 cents now.
I think, roughly, yeah,
You're saying now, with the number you're projecting now, we go down to 8.5 cents.
correct. Yeah, and this is instead of showing you the up a penny, down a penny comparison, because that doesn't make sense anymore with the reset.
Well, if it's 46 and 9, let's just say it's 46 and 9, you're down 35 cents.
Sure, yeah.
She had to, anyway. We had to.
And when
But
you
that,
said.
but being down 35 cents doesn't necessarily mean that the rate, that what we're generating on that rate has decreased.
Yeah.
And something you said before that the county increased the assessments by 500%,
Yeah.
from 60,000 to 150,000. And our rate was somewhere around 40 cents or something like that. If you said a fifth of that, that'd be about 8 cents. In other words, 5 times 8 is 40, something like that. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, teacher.
That's about what you said in public meetings when people were asking about
Right.
that. That it would be revenue neutral, more or less, I mean, not exactly.
Right, so the rate should be going down at about,
Yeah.
400%,
Yeah.
or 380% decline.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so we'll jump back over to the operating tax rate options. So, as detailed in code, this process starts from revenue neutrality. So, if we look at what our FY25 revenue was for tax receipts, we generated $73.5 million across all 4 categories. We estimated and advertised with the referendum that this year we were expecting to bring in another $3.2 million for the referendum. By code, that can get added in to your revenue neutral starting place. So our FY26 revenue neutral amount in terms of revenue generation capability is $76.7 million. The rate that equates to, based on the $14.8 billion base that we discussed earlier, the total rate is 51.56. Operating is 43.01.
Out of 5156.
Correct, yes.
So the 5156 includes debt, match, and tuition.
And operating.
And operating.
And operating.
Yes, so that middle column is the total tax rate, and this is just breaking out the operating side. The constant is the 8.55 cents, right? That's constant in the total tax rate category, or column. All right, so the difference here in what you're looking at is we basically have 3%, 7%, and 10% in terms of adding additional revenue to what we would expect to bring in based on the base that we talked about. So you just add 2.3 million to the 76.7 because that's 3% of 76.7. 7% is 5.3 and 10% is obviously 7.6. So when you add those additional amounts to the 76, the tax rate you get for both the total and the operating are shown here. These don't mean a whole lot by themselves.
3% increase brings in roughly 2.3 million additional.
Yeah.
Your at-risk is 2.243 at the assumption of 34%.
With a high rate of close to 8 million
Yeah,
on the disastrous end.
Yes.
It's a
I'm
$5
just-
million.
I'm just saying 3%. I'm just making it clear, I'm saying this out loud so the board sees what I'm
Yep.
seeing and what I'm considering. If we're assuming at a 34% loss of revenue, for those adjustments, for that money that's at risk, that means in what Emily has, with the numbers she has, we're projected to lose around 2.2 million.
2.7.
Huh?
2.7.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you're.
2.7 at the 3%, because I said last month it was about 3.5%.
That's at revenue no, that's at revenue neutral.
No, that's at risk there, 2.7. Yeah, if we stay at revenue neutral and this happens the way we're taking a wild guess at 34% at risk. Our 34% reduction puts us at losing 2.7 million if we go exactly revenue neutral.
Right.
Whereas the 3% ask that Emily is proposing, if you can go back to that other slide, Emily, that gets us 2.3 million.
Right.
So we're still losing money at the 3% option if the assumptions that we make happen. And that's, again, those assumptions.
And the
Yeah.
federal money doesn't show up.
Yes, and
Which
no,
is
that's with the
another-
federal money showing
yeah.
up.
Which is the.
That's assuming we get our federal money.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And so if the federal
No.
money doesn't show up, I think
No,
we're up to
I
3
don't,
million.
I don't think so. I think that 1.3 million is taken out of that. Am I right or
Taken
wrong?
out of what?
Out of your operating cost there?
No.
You didn't do that? Okay.
No, that's additional
do
money we lose. That's assuming that the loss of the 2.7 doesn't take into consideration any of that federal money.
Correct.
We have
Yeah,
taken that out, because she just put that as a blurb,
That's just a,
this is also what we're dealing with.
Right, so
All right,
the,
let's go to the meat and potatoes here. Go to the next chart.
alright, so we talked about this one already. So this, this is nice and colorful. But what I attempted to do was to keep the dollar change and the percentage change are in the same color, right? So property A, these are the same values that I showed you guys last month. So the 32.3, 51.7, and 25.8. The new values that are assumed down here, basically, the third line down is the calculated tax bill for these hypothetical homes this past year, okay? So home one at $32,000 of assessed value last year paid a tax bill of $741.
Sorry, real quick, from the email you sent out last night, this is the same, just not colored, the same, is that correct?
Except for
The same numbers, I added the percentages and flip-flopped the
That's not what
format.
I asked you for.
It is.
No, I want the dollar value.
You had percentages.
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, I have dollar values on this slide.
And sorry, I'm only asking because I'm looking at your thing that you sent, because I'm
Got it. But if we go, if we stick with this slide for just a second, so the blue, yellow, green, and purple basically show you what the tax bill on these example properties would look like with the various rate options that we've got in front of you.
And that's per, that, and I'll just go to the 3%, just for, just one that sticks out to me real quick. Is that per thousand? $770 per thousand?
No, that would,
$777 total.
total. So homeowner A, whose assessed value is now $145,000, would pay $770.10 for the colonial portion of their tax bill, right? So somebody who's looking at this and saying, oh, well, my new assessed value is $145. So great, I know what I'm gonna pay. This doesn't include the county rate, it doesn't include any municipalities, it doesn't include the VOTEC rate, so this is just what colonial taxes are doing.
And last year it was 741.
Right, and
So
that's
it was up about
only,
$30.
correct,
Okay.
and that's, well,
That's where I was
$6.
trying to get from what I asked you
Yeah.
to do, some more, what the difference between what we're paying now and what we're $30.
That's what that, there are numbers on here.
And if we go revenue neutral, because they were gonna go up anyway because of our referendum in capital, right, yeah. So that's why you're seeing the change already from a 25 tax bill to 26 neutrals, because there was already tax raises in place, because we spread that out over 3 years.
But the referendum, it is possible that if you could have a property that didn't see an increase, because even with the referendum revenue added to it, it didn't appreciate at the same level that colonial did overall. So I will say, I don't think that there are many of those properties out there, but it is possible that you could have properties that where the bill is going down, even with the referendum revenue being added.
Now, that's on an individual base, but as a collective of our revenue, we would still see the same amount. But an individual's household might see a reduction in their bill.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really the rub with this process, is that what we're doing in aggregate, right, we say revenue neutral, and that's at the aggregate level. That does not do anything to mitigate individual taxpayer impacts. If your home appreciated 700%, 800%, while our tax base only grew by 400%, rough numbers, right? Revenue neutral is still gonna mean you're getting a tax increase.
But from a school tax perspective, it's less of an impact than what it may be from the rest of the county impacts, numbers, those things.
Our taxes are usually the biggest portion of the tax bill. So, depending on what other, what those other rates are doing, that could mitigate it, yeah. But generally speaking, your residential district, your geographic district is the biggest portion of your property taxes. So,
but that portion of an individual person's tax bill going up or down is not our control, that's from the reassessment.
Right,
Yeah, I'm
Right,
just
I
saying
mean-
that to the public right now.
right, so, Ted, this does not have the, option to option dollar amounts that you asked for, and
That's what I wanted.
well, and I apologize that I misread your direction, because I have the percentages and not the dollar amounts. What this shows is the range, right? So if we did a revenue neutral tax rate, this is the dollar amount range that these three properties would be facing of an increase. If we did 10%, that's the dollar amount here, right? So the 3 and the 7 are obviously gonna be sandwiched in
Well,
between
you-
those
you-
two numbers.
To me, that's misleading because the variance from revenue neutral bill to plus 10% is not $74.82. It's $80.83.
I'm sorry?
You have to add those two together.
The difference between,
This is where I wanted that other numbers because of the children.
so the difference, this is accurately labeled. The revenue neutral bill, not the 25 bill, but the revenue neutral tax bill that's on this slide is $747 for this property.
For fiscal year 26,
Yes,
which is an increase from 25 to $6.01.
Yes.
correct.
So if you go up to 10%, okay, you have a difference between $747.62 and $822 is your $74, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so you add the two of them together from fiscal 25 until the new 2026 rate, okay, would increase by $80.
right, but there's nothing we can do to mitigate the $6 increase.
I understand that.
And there's nothing we can do to mitigate the $798 increase in property B.
But the difference, what I'm saying is that the difference to go from those two, okay, is you add those two together, because again, you go into property B, it's not $198.66, it's just the $800 plus the $198,
That is, yes, that's correct.
okay? So it's a big difference in going out to the public and telling them, well, if we stay with this one, your bill's gonna go up $6, but if you go with this one, we go 10%, it's only gonna be 74, it's not, that's misleading, it's $80.
So what I've got there is, I am showing that it's the variance between the revenue neutral bill amount and the 10% bill amount. So the math is accurate. You've got to read the chart to understand what you're looking at.
And I agree with what you just said there, but it doesn't tell you what the difference is between fiscal 25 or 25 to 26, to the 26. So what you're telling me, what you're telling me on that, okay, is that if we decide to go to the plus 10% for property A, they're gonna see an increase of just $74.82.
No, that's not what that says.
Yeah, it's gonna be the 80.
Right.
I was about to say, but we assume they can add.
Well, you can't assume anything with people out there. They wanna know what their difference is gonna be. If we go from revenue neutral to 3% to 10% to whatever, or 7%, whatever the things were in there, they're gonna wanna know what that difference is that they're gonna see per year on their tax rate.
Well, that's why we were elected to represent them for this.
Yeah, and we told everybody in all the meetings we had, we were staying revenue neutral.
No,
I didn't say that.
We did.
No, we
No,
did
didn't.
not.
Yes, we did.
I
Yes,
never
we did.
said that.
I
No,
never
we
said-
didn't.
I didn't say that.
We never did.
I'm telling you, that's exactly, because the question came up numerous times about that, and we told them that we were gonna be revenue neutral.
We said that
We talked about the concept and what the law allows. I personally know that I stayed away from making any commitments to stay revenue neutral.
We never did. We said that we would thoughtfully approach the fiscal environment at the time and put forth the best options to the board.
What does statute say about it? Well, you and I've had this discussion numerous times about if this were to go through, what would it be? I always got the response back, it should be revenue neutral.
I can bring up the code citation for
Because
you
they
right
have to,
now.
because they have to bring it back.
do you want me to bring the code citation up?
I'm just asking, what does it say?
It allows boards an option to reset the rate such that the maximum the revenue generated does not exceed 10% above prior year collections. That's what it says.
That's what the other districts across the state have done the same thing already.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, I know.
We're Colonial, we're not the other districts.
Get it, and you're questioning code versus the math on the screen. So it's, the code allows for what we're doing to happen. It's already been executed in multiple places, and I understand what you're saying about getting the dollars, but Emily's numbers up there aren't, those are the numbers, the difference between the variance from one to the other, it's not the total. We're not purporting that is the total in any way, shape, or form.
Emily, how many options do we have to go over?
You have to pick one.
What is it? Is
Oh,
it
there-
revenue neutral or
there's-
what?
There's,
Alright, go back up.
She's given us four.
Four,
there were four.
right? So it's revenue neutral, and in fairness, you can decide on a different percentage. As long as it's between revenue neutral and 10%, I'll figure it out
Can
and
you
get
pull
it to
up,
the
can
county.
you pull up the original chart, what you sent out last night on that one page? The one that I sent over to you today and asked for the columns to be put in?
For what purpose, Mr.
Well,
Ross?
The purpose is I want to compare what those numbers are and do quick math on it.
For what purpose? Because you think her math is wrong?
No,
Or
because I want to sit down and say, what the way that I was figuring up there today, earlier this morning, when I finally got the thing after Jeff sent it to me, is so we can see what the difference is per
It was
month. It's
It was the other one, Emily.
the one you sent
That
out
was the
yesterday.
one, the first reset doc. Or the first number two.
I'll have to go into my email to get it.
That was one thing. So, the way that I was looking at this earlier this morning is that if you take this, and I'll just use property A for instance, 741 minus the 747 is the 6.01 that we already talked about. And if you take the 741 from 770, do the math there, then you got a $30 increase per se there, just rounding those numbers off. Right? Then you got the 741 to the 800, so you got a $60 difference there at 7%. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then at 822, you've got roughly $80 or $90, whatever that comes out to, real quick calculation. That's the columns that I asked for today, is for each one of those to be put in there, is what that dollar difference was going to be for each one of those for the delta that was on there. So if you go to property A, and you go from 1985.06 revenue neutral to 1187, that's just say roughly $800 difference there. That's the numbers that I was trying to get to, or I don't think that's what you understood that I asked for you to do this morning.
Correct. I misinterpreted what you wanted on the revised slide. My point is that these numbers, if you add them together, and I do understand what you're saying, that because I don't have a total here, it could lead somebody to the impression that 74 is the only change they're gonna see. I get that point, but it is labeled accurately. They are the same differences the dollar amount differences, I just don't have the 3% number included and the 7% number included. But if you add these
Let me
two,
also jump in, sorry. If we wanna present this to the public, you could fix that and put that out tomorrow. As long as us 7 board members understand that now, because we're the only ones voting, the public isn't, but you could make that number presentable to the public tomorrow as well for what was requested, because we all understand that math that it's not on that. Is that suitable? Mr. Wilson? So that
Yeah,
the public can still
that's
see,
fine,
because you're
that's
asking
fine.
about the public seeing that.
That's fine, so they understand what those differences are, but that's after we've made the decision on what we're going with.
But we're gonna make the decision based on the information that we all agree that we understand that. We can still give them a better, more detailed information. We could revise that 1,000,000 times to break it down more simply for them as we've made the decision, but they're not the ones making the decision. We're representing them, and as long as we agree we understand what she's presenting, I don't think that
I don't disagree.
data
with
has
that.
any issue.
I don't disagree with that statement. The fact of the matter is once we make this decision and the public goes out to the public and whatnot, you know as well as I do, if we go with 10%, I'm just gonna say that, right? We're all gonna be getting phone calls and complaints and everything else about it.
Alan, you need to tell the county that we want to be revenue neutral or something up to 10%, right? But what do you recommend?
She ain't gonna tell you that.
No.
She ain't gonna tell you that at all.
And you don't recommend anything.
I recommend against revenue neutral.
Do you recommend 10%?
That would put the district on the most stable, sustainable financial footing we can offer to our community.
Do you recommend 5%?
This is, as I said last month, this is an area where the board has the discretion.
I know, but we're gonna make the decision
Right.
based on your recommendation, or you're not recommending anything.
So, Robin, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Because I've had intense conversations with Emily about this. And I came to the assumption last month based on just her 34%. Again, she is taking a wild guess. This is insane variables that the county is
I know,
giving
she
us.
doesn't have
Yeah.
complete information.
And we've now expressed our disdain for
Right,
how
right,
the county's
right.
presenting this. So I'm gonna move past it.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say, we're gonna make the decision with what we have, even though it's crap. Excuse
Well,
me.
what do the board members
No.
want?
Yeah.
I mean, can
Well,
we
sorry.
just ask the board members what we want? Do we want neutral? Do we want 5%? Do we want 10%?
So what I asked her, and a couple of us have kind of discussed with her, is that's why we came up with those 4 options. 3% option, if it happens in what we're seeing, we're gonna lose revenue. We are not revenue neutral at that point. We are actually revenue reduction, at about $500,000. Am I right? 400,000 was the number, 2.7?
And
And
that's,
that's at what percentage?
And that's-
That's at 3.
and that's if we get the federal money,
Yes.
which we're not going to get.
I would caution you against factoring the federal money
Yeah,
into
Keep
this
that totally out of the
conversation right now.
conversation, yes.
For purpose of just understanding that we're facing a difficult climate, because you can't,
And I do, hold on, I do wanna say that I am not claiming that we are not going to receive the variance on the appeal number,
Yeah, that's
I-
just
I'm not-
your
I
best
am not-
guess.
right? I am giving you guys what is at risk,
Mhm.
right? And the assumptions that I had to make around coming to those numbers. I don't know how things are gonna play out. I think it's incredibly unlikely that we're gonna lose out on as much revenue as at stake with the appeal number. Because it doesn't make any sense to me that every single one of those appeals is gonna be lost. And that,
Agreed.
right? So, when you say at 3%, we're not gonna break even, I can't agree with that statement because I don't know I don't know how these appeals are gonna
No,
play,
I'm saying
right?
that's based off of just the random assumption that we
But-
kind of.
But Emily doesn't know, and we don't know.
No.
So we either have to vote, revenue neutral, 5% or 10%, we have to do something, but the board members have to discuss that.
Which, and that's why I was
not
gonna tell you my opinion, looking at it as 3%. If we go off that assumption, it's not enough. 7%, for me, what I have thought and thought about this for an entire month back and forth and have Emily answer any questions I have and discussing whether is, I felt 7% because I'm somebody who I'm trying to tell to the public, listen, I want to be revenue neutral, but I'm doing it with very limited information here. There's a lot of variables I don't like, and 7% feels like I am making the best decision because it gives me a buffer for anything else to where my goal, no matter what, is keeping this district whole without having significant hurt to it financially. To protect the children, protect the staff.
And I hear what you're saying, all right? But we all want to be revenue neutral. And everybody says it wasn't said and everything like that, but that's what people have heard, and people I've talked to, they always remind me of that, saying it's gonna be revenue neutral. If we're gonna go with anything on that thing, I think we get as close to revenue neutral as what we can get.
But Chris,
Now, that ain't- that's-
I think
now-
7%, Chris just said 7%.
Yeah.
Because of the appeals that are outstanding, the 7% is the closest to revenue
I
neutral you're
disagree,
gonna get.
because I gotta go along with what Emily's saying there, if you assume, okay, and it's a wild guess with everything, is that all those appeals are gonna go through.
But she's
There's no,
not,
there's no way that they can.
that's
all
why
those
she's
go.
picking, she did pick 34%. Like she didn't pick like all of
Yeah,
them.
but
All of them going
it's-
through would be the high number that was up there, right?
No, 34%. And what she calculated, the number was 34%.
No.
No, 34%, the 34% number represents what 18% of the people that appealed in Colonial, they requested on average 34% decrease
That's.
in the value that the county assessed them at.
But you used that 34% as part of your calculations.
Correct.
I did, I applied that 34% to the
You
$1.2
put
billion,
82%.
right? So that's an assumption. If my assumption is wrong, and let's say that that $1.2 billion worth of property, on average, they want a 60% reduction,
We're out.
right? That, the swing there represents millions of dollars of lost revenue. So what I'm highlighting for you guys is not a prediction of what's gonna happen, it is the risk that we are managing,
No,
right?
that's-
It's,
I understand.
I'm,
So the
we're managing the
34%
risk.
is the best guess risk. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not just throwing out a number
Yeah.
to try to cover.
But
Correct.
that's what it is, it's the best guess.
Right.
But somebody has to propose a motion that we're gonna do 5% or
I
7
agree,
or something.
and I think that
And we
that's
have to
where we
vote
should
on it,
begin
yes
to
or no.
move.
If we vote 3 to 4 or 4 to 3 or something like that, we should have to do something. She can't tell you any, she doesn't have magic balls.
Right.
She
And
said
it's,
that already.
Robin, it's more,
Crystal ball broke.
Ted wasn't here last month, so I wanted to make sure we had due diligence where Ted could answer any, or ask any question, kind of wanted to kind of get caught up with some of the information we got last month. Were you here last month?
Sure.
Yes, you were, I'm sorry, I apologize. Long month, but I wanted to make sure Ted could ask all those questions, because there was a lot of it, and make sure, because this is a big decision.
Well, Ted and I talked about this before. We thought they did say revenue neutral.
Yeah.
But I'm not arguing whether it's revenue neutral. I'm arguing that Emily's already told us that he knows, and she can't make it better or worse. I mean, it's still a guess.
And the sad part, what I believe is, my guess is, I believe somewhere between 3.5% to 7% will get us revenue.
We'll make a motion.
Well, we
I mean, what are we gonna say?
I make a
We have
mo-
projected
I make a
number would be
motion.
percentage-wise.
Go ahead.
She can make a motion.
Say it.
That we approve the 7% option for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025. Grant authorization to the president, vice president, and executive secretary of the Colonial School Board of Education I always get the long ones, to issue a tax warrant to Newcastle County Department of Finance as determined by the board.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
As moved by Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Breeding. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Yes. What's the rate if you do 5%?
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that you're not all watching me do my.
So I want to, also, can I,
It's gonna be
Well,
54.
Justin, ask you something real quick. Why are you doing it, Emily? 7%
Yeah.
Does that cover enough?
No.
Cause here's my problem, right?
You're asking if she wants to.
Hold on, I know, hold on a second, but I think we need to prepare for the risk and scaling back, if we're put in a position to scale back, that's not doable, because that's saying that people in programming weren't necessary in the first place, which they are, that's not even true. So we know we need these people, we know we need the programming, we can't afford to scale back, so I wanna make sure we have enough. And that's the question I'm trying to ask, are we gonna have enough?
And I hear what you're saying, okay? It's no different than what we faced 8 years ago, whatever ago, where we had to go, and we had to talk about the same thing. Where we had
Yeah,
to-
but we cut, we did make cuts, but we also still had to make
People
cuts.
feel that, the people who are left feel that.
So where we cut in all the things outside of the classroom. We cut athletics, band, art, we kept all the things in the core classes. So that's that's where it starts. And so we have to be mindful that that's gonna be where we're headed. If that was the one thing during the referendum that we were told loud and clear, that if you threaten to cut those things, then we're gonna pay the price. Because nobody wanted us to threaten to cut athletics.
And Jeff, I agree, okay, that's what I said on it. But we also had the discussion in there, and people heard the thing, that we were gonna be revenue.
No, we never said that.
I hear what you're
I
saying.
know what they think they heard, but we never said that. We were specifically not say that.
All right, but do we want a different one, or we want to vote on?
Well, hold on, I wanna bring up, I wanna make one point on the motion that's important, that I think it's because of the nuances of this one. Chris just put forward the 7% option, but we also have to make sure you're approving the tuition tax, the debt, the tuition, the debt, and what's the other one?
Match.
Match. That has to be approved as well. So like when this motion's on the table, it has to be, you're approving that 8.55 as well. Because you just approved the 7% option, but that.
We haven't reached it yet.
No, but you just motioned to approve that, but that didn't explicitly say, including the match, debt, and tuition as
So
presented.
can
Does
I
Chris have to
move
change it?
to
I would modify.
Is there one vote or two
Can I-
votes?
Time out.
Point of order.
Time out.
May I amend my motion to
That's
include that
where I was getting
information?
ready to go, is you cannot amend, we have to
Okay.
make a motion to amend it,
Okay,
okay? Or else you decide to pull your motion from the table.
Do I hear a motion to amend?
Not yet, not until we have those numbers.
No, this is just to amend the motion to get it to the point where when you get that number,
The motion can be amended.
the motion can be amended anyway, while we're waiting.
Yes, it can be, but you can't vote on it.
No, I'm agreeing with you. It needs
So
to,
there's
the
no
motion,
sense moving forward with anything until we get the other number.
well, because it's still on the table.
Yeah.
So you might as well make it.
There's a question out on that amount.
No, you added someone asked for 5,
I asked for.
but that doesn't change the 7 line, does
You
it?
can't vote on that because there's.
No, we're not gonna vote on
it. Well, then.
Can you amend it though?
Well, that's just.
While you're waiting to
The
vote.
answer to the question is yes.
Jeff,
Okay.
Jeff, to be honest with you, I was earlier in the tonight thinking about that problem. But the way that Emily has put the options, the 7% is a total tax rate of 0.5517 with an operating tax rate of 4662. I think it's implicit
Okay.
in that total tax rate that we are
That that's
covering.
All right,
included.
all right,
those.
okay.
That's included.
All right, so then, if that's the way the board is operating, I am comfortable with that.
Because she.
I just wanna make sure that
Well, just make sure.
That's not my story.
it is, because if Chris is correct, but it wasn't explicitly stated. And if that's the assumption the board is making, that those 3 are cooked into the
Right.
option, then I'm fine.
Then let's assume.
Then we'll assume it. All right, Chris,
All right,
the motion stays.
so we have a motion on the floor.
For 7%.
We're in comment and question period,
Right.
and Emily's doing some math.
Does anybody have Jeopardy music for Emily? She's doing
I would think that 5% would land between 0.53 and 0.55, somewhere around 0.54. But I don't think that's what
Give her-
you're
give her-
asking,
give her a
Ted.
couple
I think
minutes.
you're looking for dollars.
She's got that
Are-
computer just a moment.
So Ted, do you wanna know the dollar amount generated by 5 and the percent and the tax rate?
I don't want this to be a money grab. put extra money into the funds. We're-
To
Keenan's-
mitigate
Keenan's-
risk?
No, what Keenan's saying, is that enough?
It's a
We're gonna
guess.
we're gonna try to make sure that we're breaking even.
It's a guess, though, no matter which one. I don't even understand.
Money grab would imply that like we're
We're trying to get
trying
more.
to take more money without needing it. Like to Keenan's
That's
point.
what I'm saying, what do we need?
We need.
10% would be the
10% would
would be the,
no,
the best possible of going after a money grab.
but no,
We're making
10%,
concessions
it's
by
not a
picking
money
some.
grab.
That-
Yeah,
That's,
sorry.
that's not a money grab
Ten
either.
percent would cover the law. If Emily's projection goes through, the 10% covers us, Keenan, on the loss. The 7% barely covers, might not even cover it all.
Well,
The
that's
3% doesn't cover it at all.
Let's see what the 5% comes up.
If the
I agree, the
7
3%
doesn't cover it, how can the 5?
The 7 does cover it.
7 doesn't cover it. It's the 7.
What are you thinking we have to cover, Ted? What's the number that you've got in your head that we need to cover?
The number that you had on there was the 2.7 is what we were looking at.
No.
8,
2.7 is the appeals, if all of my assumptions are accurate.
it's 8 million.
This is the number.
8 million
8 million is
8
all
million
that's at risk.
Is the total.
is the maximum
The
risk.
maximum risk. That's what I'm using the maximum
Does not
risk.
include the 1.3.
Because to Robin's point, we don't know what we don't know.
Well, you can guess all you want, but you can't say.
That's what
for
I'm
firm.
saying. Like, that's the
Because
one.
if we're wrong, we could be wrong high or low.
And
Correct.
so the other thing,
Sorry, I hope you don't mind.
yes, the federal uncertainty is, while it's not directly related to reassessment and this process, it is something that we have to manage if it actually comes to fruition. So it represents a financial uncertainty that we will have to manage through if it comes forward. The other thing that I don't have an estimate on is if collections tank and, we're getting 95% of expected revenue instead of 98 or 99%, that's also something that would impact our operations.
Which could happen because we're going through a very tough financial time right now.
Right, so
Well, and that's a risk that we've had to deal with all the time. We've been very fortunate that we get 98% of our.
correct,
Right.
but I would argue that reassessment being something that we've
This is
not,
different, yeah.
we've not seen how taxpayers act with reassessment
I understand. That's,
in 40 years, right?
unfortunately, that's a risk we have to take.
Manage, that's what we're doing. All of this is managing the risk of the uncertainty. And Robin's right, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't give you firm answers on where we're gonna land,
No, absolutely.
right? So, the numbers. 5% would generate an additional 3.8 million. The rate that would be the total tax rate, not just the operating rate, the total tax rate would be 0.5414. I gotta bring it out to the 4 decimals.
Girl, they can't do math. Nailed it.
And then what's the 7% numbers?
It's right here.
The 7% numbers is $5.3 million of added revenue and a total tax rate of 0.5517.
Do I have any other questions from the board? Or comment?
No, but yes, I want to point out that when I look at last year's budget, our total federal revenue was almost $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
Just
That's
making a point.
Yep. And Chris, when I say that we can't factor that in right now, we have to contemplate it and consider it. If those funds do get skimmed, frozen, or whatever you wanna call, we are still gonna have to make, whether or not you pass 7, 10, doesn't matter what you pass, we're still gonna have to make tough decisions because we're gonna have to We can't just replace it.
I-
We're gonna have to make tough decisions.
I understand.
Yeah, so that's gonna happen no matter what, so I don't want to assume that just because that happens, that, oh, that's gonna, and we're just gonna pull the 1.3 out of thin air and dump it in there.
We'll
That's
have
not,
to deal with it.
we're gonna have to manage through it, and that manage through it
Yes.
means tough decisions are gonna have to be
Yeah.
made. That's why I wanted to clarify
That's
that.
fine.
It's an imperfect world.
Well, I mean, that's,
That's normal.
in a nutshell, that's all of it, we have to manage through whatever comes.
Mhm. Agreed.
Are we ready to vote or not?
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Handy? Good. Ms. Breeding, you good? Ms. Smith?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Can you repeat what's on the table? I mean, what's on the floor, right?
It is the 7% increase, which also includes obviously the match, the tuition, and the debt that's assumed into every one of the proposals that Emily put up. It is the 7% increase to our operating.
And that's the number she's gonna tell the county.
That's
That
If
would be-
it-
Total operating.
if, right, yeah.
Yeah, if it's approved.
There's no,
If it's approved.
no, I mean, there's no nuance about it. It's 7%.
Correct.
That's good.
Mr. Laws, any other questions or comments?
No.
And that covers the need, not for the worst case scenario, but the near worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Is that?
But
Yeah.
she don't
We
want
don't know,
to,
that's off of her assumptions.
Yeah,
Off of her assumed
That's
worst
all-
case
yeah.
scenario.
an assumption we're all,
That's all she can do.
we asked her to make. Do you
It's
have
not the
any-
worst case scenario, it's the near, it helps us with the near worst case scenario.
Agreed.
It is,
It's close enough, but
it
it's
is
not, it's not
utilizing
in.
more than half of the flexibility we have to keep the district on the firmest financial footing and the most stable that we can offer. And what I will say, which, we didn't talk as much about, this month is, I mentioned it, but if none of these things wind up being as bad as I'm predicting, or projecting, or assuming, right? And the sky, the sun comes out and everything is rosy, we have options to either prolong the next referendum, right? So give people relief and say, okay, you made the decision to put us on the firmest financial footing we could be, so we can ride that for a longer period of time, or conversely, we can spend down some of that excess balance by manipulating how we're using the tuition funds and the match funds, et cetera, so that we can, manage the rate more aggressively in the future. Or you can do a combination of those things. So, to the money grab point, I don't wanna leave folks with the impression that we are just trying to pad our coffers and sit around as fat cats.
That's what we need to be very careful.
Well, Emily just made the
The-
statement she just made, is not that.
It is not that, because
Yeah,
if,
poor use of term.
Yeah.
I just, you have that out there, that people say you're gonna have all, if this goes through and everything goes by the assumptions that we have, we're gonna have extra money.
Because Emily, in the end of the day, we're not voting on right now an increase in our spending of our projected budget. We're still have the budget that we have. We are just trying to make sure we're gonna have the revenue to pay for the budget that's already been presented by you and approved on. So,
Well, yeah,
sorry,
I haven't
That's
presented.
next year's
Well, budget for
Emily's
this year yet.
pleasure.
you're not even, but,
Right.
sorry,
We
yes.
need to be very clear with the communication that's being put out here, is the fact that the federal money possible reduction, however you wanna call it, are not included in that calculation.
So I wanna be clear that I've given you the numbers, I've not hit anything where I'm adding in 1.3 million anywhere.
I know you're not, but I'm saying, any communication you put out there, you need to make sure that that is clear.
It's
I would like to thank Emily for explaining the unknown before we vote.
Y'all good? All right. Do a roll call instead.
Yeah.
Mr. Handy? Ms. Breedy?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Laws?
No.
Dr. Dorsey?
Yes.
Mr. Crosson?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. We go to 6-1. Motion carries.
All right. Next month, Emily will present the budget. Should be up on the hot seat.
I can't wait.
Emily is.
This was your preparation.
That's where you can figure in that 1.3 million.
Yeah, that was, appreciate the board's, heated and passionate conversation around.
More passionate than you.
Passionate, well, for us, that was heated, we don't normally go till 9:30.
Well,
So,
and I want to say, Emily, thank you, because it's been 2 months, but it's because we take it so seriously, which this is what this is all about. So we had a very intellectual and, passionate discussion about this, and we got all the answers we possibly could, and we made it very clear to the public that we care about them in the decisions we make, and we know we don't want to take advantage of anything. We are doing what's best for what we believe the public, the district, and everything, and we hope they can understand our decisions with that.
We're doing what we think is best for the kids.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Period,
Yes.
it's the kids.
well
Yes.
said.
And at the end of the day, I would actually back that up with those words. I made the best decision with the information I had to do what was best for kids.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Emily explained what you knew and what you didn't know, and she still doesn't know. So what are we gonna do?
And the news journals quoted me on it.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Literally.
Yeah. She already, Emily, great quote.
What do you got next in the updates and action items, Dr. Menzer?
I don't think it was fair for Emily not to have all the information from Newcastle County. I don't think they were prepared to do what they
It's not fair.
It's not Emily.
Ted, think about the districts that made decisions 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and she got new information yesterday.
Well,
That
just
is
to be clear, many districts
Again.
made the decision to go 10%.
I know.
So,
Again, this is our district, not worried about the other districts.
No, but I'm saying how tough it is to know that there's new information out that we got to decide on that they didn't.
And on both sides of the coin is, yes, our number one priority is the kids, okay? But we also have to worry about our community as well.
So we got
okay,
next.
so next up, this is just a first read of the policy manual recommendations from the policy committee. We've reviewed sections 500, 600, 700, and policy 4 came back up for a review from the policy committee. And we've shared these we've reviewed them with our legal counsel, and at this time, the board needs to just kind of look through the policies that changes were recommended. Some of them you'll see, a bulk of them were just wordsmith alignments with code, numbers, citations. The two that are in the middle there, 4 and 604, are the two most significant recommendations that we're putting forward for changes with respect to the policy manual. So just kind of review those and be ready for the second read in August. If you have any questions outside, you feel free to reach out, but it's pretty straightforward. In the board docs, when you go to the document, you'll see all the changes and all the recommendations and what's being brought forward. So it says it on each document. Next up, we have a candidate for consideration from the Citizens Finance Oversight Committee. They have a seat available and they have someone who is interested in joining. And so they would ask the board to approve the candidate presented. The applicant's information was in the executive content of board docs. So at this time, I've asked the board to consider and act upon that recommendation.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the applicant presented to be added to the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee.
Second.
Do I hear a second? Yes, I do, from Mr. Crosson. All right, and as moved by Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Crosson. With that, are there any questions or comments from the board? No questions or comments. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
And the last agenda item is we improve facilities update. There's an action item involved here, but there's also information for you. You know, quarterly, since the capital referendum and our improvement of our facilities, the public during that effort, the public said we want to know more about how our money's being spent in this space. So all this year, every 3 months, we have a report from our facilities team and our operations division around what's going on with that money. And this month is an update there for the board to see and the community to see what's going on in our buildings. But And that's no different than we've been doing all along, your static document there. This is also reviewed with the the Major Capital Construction Review Committee, which also came out of that referendum campaign that the public wanted to have more input and involvement in the capital project process. So this has been reviewed by them as well already. Then the action item on here is part of our capital campaign was the William Penn roof project and roof replacement. So we are seeking the board's approval on the schematic design for that project so that we can send it down to somewhere down in Dover for them to approve and us to move forward with that project in a timely fashion. So I
Sure you held strong here just to answer questions for this, didn't you?
Yes, he did. I said I thought
We should have
that
put
way.
this motion before that.
Well, that's what I said when I saw the agenda. I saw where it fell, like in the scheme of things, but, you know.
Yeah, it was poorly timed, poorly placed. I apologize to Steve, your wife, your family.
Well, before we get to any questions, do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the William Penn roof design proposal as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, as moved by Ms. Smith, seconded by Mr. Handy. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Everything went good with the meeting, I apologize, I missed that.
No, everything actually went great with the meeting. We had very basically involved community members and parents that were involved in that. You know, I know our 2 school board members. We actually have 2 new applicants that we're reviewing as well for possible future involvement. But last week we spent every bit of an hour and 15 minutes, went over just asking questions, answering, a lot of insight, a lot of thoughts. So it's been showing to be a proven quality effort that's going forward. So, but no, and there will be some information we're putting together that will be made public hopefully by early August with more information around that William Penn Athletic Complex. It's been a major focus of that group. You
Can
know,
we talk briefly next week about it? Can I get a recap?
100% not a problem.
Thank you, I appreciate you.
On board. We do a lot of talking about it. We're very happy to talk about it actually. I'm excited
For
to.
you guys. All right, any other questions or comments from the board? All right. All those in favor, please signify with saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion's approved. All right.
This is it.
With that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
What a marathon form. All right, do I have a second?
We had to make it worthwhile.
All right. As
I got my
moved,
money's worth, thank you.
as moved by board member Robin Crosson, seconded by Ms. Breeding. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Give me a gavel.
Hey, finish it off, please.
As president of the school board.